there's nothing like cracking that cellophane and pulling that record out. It just smells great.
Welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Non-stop hardcore energy.
I love the show, guys. You're awesome.
Unlike any other.
With your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bod Father.
Man, this stuff rocks.
Hey, everybody, this is your bass player, Mr. Billy Sheehan, right here, and you're listening to one of my favorite shows in the whole world, the BODS Mayhem Hour.
The views and opinions of the guests do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of BODS Mayhem Radio Network, its staff, affiliates, or sponsors. Parental discretion is advised. Welcome to BODS Mayhem Radio Network.
Hey folks, it's John the Bod, and once again I bring you guys another awesome interview on Throwback Thursday. Every Thursday we're going to be throwing you guys some awesome interviews that's not hit the light of day, and you want to just sit around, relax, listen to the interview because we got a lot of good stuff coming up for you guys and gals. Once again, this is our Throwback Thursday interview. Thank you all so much for everything that you guys do for BODS Mayhem Hour. Everybody, welcome to BODS Mayhem Hour. I'm your host, John the Bod, a.k.a. The Bod Father, and as always, I bring you guys awesome interviews. Today, I have an awesome guest that's on the line with me right now. This man is one of my favorite bassist players that are out there today, Mr. Billy Sheehan. He has been with Talus, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Talus UFO, which is a big Eddie Trunk band right there who he likes. David Lee Roth, Mr. Big, and Nyson. I hope I said that right too. Mr. Steve I. And now the legendary, as I call them the legendary because their music kicks ass, is the Winery Dogs. So Billy, how's it going, man?
Wow, that's quite a lineup there. I forgot how many bands I was in.
So with the Winery Dogs right now, are you guys working on anything new? Are you working on any new material to put anything out? What's going on?
The Winery Dogs have fired up, getting ready to. We've already did a couple writing sessions for the next record, our second record. We're very excited about it, of course, and that's my main focus, really, at this point, is the Winery Dogs. I love Mr. Big, and I'll always be a part of Mr. Big, but Mr. Big doesn't play as much live as I really need to, because I need to play live a lot in order to keep my hands in shape and keep my sanity. So I'm concentrating mostly on Winery Dogs these days, but we're also going to do end off Mr. Big tour that we did a little bit of it in the fall for 2 weeks in February. So I'll take a little break from Winery Dogs to go do that, come back, and get right back to work.
I want to stick around with the Winery Dogs here for just a little bit. Their self-titled album, well, your guys' self-titled album, I should say. What are some of your favorite tracks off that album to play live?
Well, I Know Angel I loved instantly. Regret also, to me, was such an emotional song. I mean, there were times we would be playing that song and people would have tears streaming down their face. It's unbelievable. What a great piece. Time Machine is a riot to play live. It's hard to. It's like asking you which one of your kids do you like the best. It's hard to pick one.
Yeah.
To really because they all have their own little thingy. But since the beginning, I've been partial to I Know Angel and also to Regret. But I like everything on the record.
With this three-piece band, what do you think the Winery Dogs bring to the table for music that some bands may not?
Well, I think we bring a similar thing to a lot of bands, is that reality, the realism, where we actually play and actually sing, and there's no fake stuff, and there's no trickery, and there's no pitch correction, and there's no nonsense, and we do it live. But one thing we do that might be a little different from some bands today is we actually write together in a room. Get together in a room, as we just did recently, me, Mike, and Richie, and we bounce ideas back and forth. I come up with a little bass line, and Mike will start doing drums to it, and Richie asks, well, what key is that? And try this, and bang, bang, bang. Next thing you know, we start moving around, and that's how we completely wrote the first record. Though there was some songs that Richie had that were in more completed form, not done completely, but they were further along, that we took and expanded upon. But this time, similarly, we just got in a room and played together. And also now with this record, we've got a year and a half of touring under our belt, so we we get a lot more tightness, a lot more communication within the band, where we know each other so much better that writing, when I'm writing something or coming up with an idea, I'm thinking of Richie's voice in there, Mike's drums in there. I believe they both do the same. So, yeah, a lot of bands do all of that. But I think with any band, the individuals that comprise the band make up its DNA, and that's what makes it unique. Myself, Mike Portnoy, of course, is quite an amazing drummer and a unique stylist. Richie is a beyond unique stylist. He's one of a kind for sure, superstar in my humble opinion. And I do my shtick in there too somehow. So I believe we do a lot of things a lot of other bands do, and certainly have done. I've got a lot of great bootlegs of the Beatles being in a room together writing songs where they're talking to each other and working out parts. And to me, that was really an incredible way for a band to write. And so that's what we've been concentrating on mostly.
Which band for you challenge you the most as far as playing or coming up with just new ideas for bass tracks? What band has challenged you the most?
Well, when I played with Steve, a lot of the lines that he had are built for guitar.
Right.
And so playing them on bass was a little tough. Actually, Niacin was even more difficult because those lines were built on keyboards, and it's way different than a fretboard. So a lot of times, and plus in Niacin, there's a little taste of some jazziness, and which is not necessarily my thing. I like it, but I don't do it, and I wouldn't pretend I could do it.
Right.
So when I got to play the jazzier stuff, it's not the type of thing my hands would naturally gravitate towards. So I had to kind of push myself in another direction. So that's a challenge. Those certainly were two challenges, but there's also the challenge of just hanging in there and grooving and being a part of the whole rather than an individual sticking out, which I've always tried to do as a bass player, even though I get accused of the opposite. But that's always been my, I watch the drummer closely. I want to lock with him. And so Niacin is great because we got Dennis Chambers on drums, but I've been lucky with all the bands I've worked with to have had excellent drummers. And that always makes you a better bass player because it's usually all about the drums. In spite of the recent hit pop song, it is in fact all about the drums for the most part. So I'm lucky with the Winery Dogs to have Mike Portnoy, with Mr. Big to have had Pat, and now Matt Starr is filling in for him and a lot of stuff. And Greg Bissonette, the Eat 'em and Smile days, and so lucky to play with some great drummers. So, but challenge-wise, doing lines that weren't designed for bass and having to figure out how to get them in there sometimes is a little tough. But if you just keep at it long enough, it can happen. That's why I often say to bass players that come up to me, "There's nothing that I do that you can't do."
Yeah.
If you just spend enough time on it, So I believe that's the case.
I want to say this to you before I forget. To me, you're the modern day Cliff Burton of the bass players out there, and I want to talk about originality and style. When you were coming up playing bass and everything, did you find your own style as far as playing bass, or how did you work on that, Billy?
Well, starting in the late 60s, I started really playing a lot, like around 67, 68. By 1969 and 70, I was out performing a lot. In the first half of the 70s, up to 74 or 5, we were doing... we did 21 nights in a row once. We did 3 shows in one day.
Wow. Back
in Tallis in the old days. And so I was never really looking to create a style or formulate some path. I was just playing and playing and playing and playing. And there was requirements of me because we only had a 3-piece band, so we needed to have somebody do those extra notes. If there's a little organ part in a song or something else that wasn't bass, guitar, or drums, somebody had to make up for it. And everybody had to sing too. So everybody was stretched to the limit of whatever their capacity was as a performer. So unknown to me, eventually a style came of that. And then I didn't really even notice it until about 76, 77, where people began to comment on the way I was playing, and I really hadn't paid much attention to it. I just was out there trying to get the gig done, trying to do my best to do it. Tone-wise, I was trying to make a tone that would cover up for the lack of a keyboard and lack of a rhythm guitar player. Just a big giant wall behind the guitar player locked into the drums so we could, pull off live gigs. But we would do really adventurous material as a three-piece. We'd do the Tubes, White Punks on Dope. We would do King Crimson in the Court of the, Schizoid Band. We would do Carry On Wayward Son by Kansas.
Oh, nice.
All bands that had a lot of people in them. And so I had to, we pulled it off somehow, according to the audience that was showing up. They were quite happy with it. So eventually from that became a style. And I'm a firm believer that if style happens, if you're searching for a style, I believe that it will elude you forever. But if you just get the job done and do your thing and do the best you possibly can, you'll step back one day and go, not only do I have a tone that's mine, but I also have a style that's mine.
Mm-hmm.
So most of it was formulated 76, 77. I had all the distortion. I was doing unaccompanied solos from even before that, about 72 or 73. I started doing that stuff. So it was way, way long ago when there were brontosauruses and tyrannosauruses and there was a website years ago that used to do these sarcastic interviews and always, insulting questions just to see if you could stand up to it. And they said to me, Billy, you're so old. We heard that you played at the Last Supper.
Wow.
I said to them, yeah, not only that, I had to invent the wheel to get my gear there. So it's been around a long time.
Speaking of playing back in the era of 60s, 70s and things like that, do you prefer the older style of music the way it used to be than it is today, like recording-wise, playing shows? What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think that was really the best time in music. It was when the music business was still a business. It wasn't the music industry yet. Now, unfortunately, it's going back to being a business again because it's rightfully so. And a business populated with people who love music. And record labels were into music and bands and playing. They weren't into the corporate bottom dollar. So it was a great time for music, and bands could just play. I know, just get like Have a Nice Day, the super hits of the 70s box set. Just listen to the wild variation of styles, from the heaviest stuff you've ever heard to the most amazing soloing to the pop oddities, and they were all hits. And the radio station played all kinds of stuff. They didn't specialize just in one little thing. They'd play Three Dog Night, and then there'd be a Miles Davis tune on, and then Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and then Beatles, and then Ziggy Stardust songs from David Bowie, and it was all over the place. So it was such a great time for that. So most people my age, we have that similar trait in that we like a lot of music, all kinds of stuff. Where people younger than myself, which includes probably most of the population of the world, they kind of specialize in one or two things, and they never quite do. And that's why I love when I corner somebody, I can play them something that I know they've never heard of, that I know is going to blow their mind. You know? So that's always a blast. I'm a real iTunes freak. I have 1.5 terabytes to 250,000 songs in my iTunes collection, finely tuned collection with bands and musicians and music that I really love.
There's a lot of bands I like from that time frame. I'm 35 and I dig the old music because I guess to me you can actually feeling in their music that they're putting out there, instead of like some today that it just seems like it's 30 minutes in a studio and then they're done and it's out.
There's a lot of great bands today.
Well, yeah.
As well. I think every era has probably the same number of great bands and great musicians. Unfortunately, nowadays, because there isn't a central, every town doesn't have its rock radio station and its concert scene and its club scene. And there's a couple, and there used to be just a couple magazines. It was easy to focus in on the best stuff. Now it's kind of all over the place, and it's hard to even discover what's going on out there. Mm. But I agree with you also that there's a feel spirit, if you will, to all the early stuff from mid-'60s right up until just about the end of the 80s. I'd say my collection starts to really dwindle out chronologically after about 87, 88. There's not so much new stuff, and then maybe a little trickle into the 90s, and then the lion's share of everything I have probably falls in between 1967 and 77.
What was it for you, Billy, that got you into music, that made you decide, say, this is what I want to do? What was that spark, man?
Well, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan as a little kid, and I had big sisters, and they went crazy for the Beatles. And I saw all the girls in the audience going berserk for the Beatles, and I just thought, that's the job I want, because I like girls, and if they'll pay attention to me if I'm playing on stage, I'm going for it. Of course, another 40 million other young pubescent males said the exact same thing at that exact time too. So we all got into it. Initially, not for necessarily the right reason, but at least it was an entrance point. And then once I started playing, I instantly got into the music of it, and I kind of dropped away at the idea that it's going to be something that will make you popular or open up your romantic life or whatever else. And right away, one of the first bands I got into was the Yardbirds, which is, of course, a legendary band, which had at some point or another contained Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, and it was one of the first bands to really be recognized for this kind of musicality and jamness, all kinds of cool stuff. So I was way into them, and I right away got into early Frank Zappa, too, when it first came out, the Freak Out album. And so right away, I was able to make a quick left turn away from that idea of popularity and the idea of having girls in the audience screaming. And so therefore, my first couple of bands, they weren't necessarily rock bands. They were actually jamming jazz bands. I had a band with just myself, a drummer, and a sax player. And we played a Zappa track, a Miles Davis track, in high school, at the high school assembly. And I know that the guys and people in the audience are like, what the hell was that? Because they were all like regular old rock and pop. And, eventually I made variations, of course, stylistically, and got into most everything. But I was glad right away. I love the fact that the door was opened up for me with that one particular thing. And then later on, I discovered the real, the depth and possibilities, unlimited possibilities of music as an art form.
Music is I've said this 1,000 times, it's such a therapy for people, and it's such a relief for people.
It is the greatest art form, and I've heard it said and read about it, proof of that by many philosophers. It's a wonderful book called This Is Your Brain on Music, which talks about how music affects people and how deep it goes. I know that I read an article recently in a nursing home, comatose or catatonic patients sometimes they found out when they were teenagers, and they play music from that era, and they come alive. Yeah. All of a sudden, suddenly they're talking and they're hanging out, and my mom, when she was in her last days, literally her last couple of days, we're all hanging out there with her, and, keeping a vigil, and my sister Marianne said to me, "Put some Sinatra on," And so I got my laptop out, I opened up a Sinatra, my massive Sinatra folder. And my mom, who was, in half consciousness, instantly, that was so-and-so, and the band was such and such, and the singer, or the lyrics were done by so-and-so, and she knew it all like it was yesterday.
Wow.
And there's an incredible thing that happens with the mind and with music. Yeah. And it's really can't necessarily be completely understood by science right now, but there is a thing that happens with the mind, with the brain, with music, and it's an incredible phenomenon, I believe.
In any of the bands that you've been in, Billy, what song would you say best describes Billy Sheehan?
Oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I still love To Be With You, Mr. Big, a little acoustic ballad, little love song. That song changed all of our lives, that not necessarily representing me, but I like it in a way that some people never read the comments on YouTube. Every musician I know, that's our rule. We refuse to read comments ever because it's just hateful, horrid, terrible crap you can imagine.
Yeah.
So, but before I learned that lesson, you know, a lot of people would just say, well, all Sheehan does is solo all the time, which is the most ludicrous statement I've ever heard, because I was put on To Be With You. There's no bass solo. There's a little McCartney-esque kind of a sweet little bass line in that, and that's the bass. I think my bass is the first note you'll hear on the beginning of that song, the slide down to the D flat minor. And to me, I love that song, and I love what it does. So I wouldn't mind being represented by that song one tiny bit. But then again, we get a lot of requests for Shy Boy, which is a song I wrote back before the David Lee Roth days in my band Talus back in Buffalo with Dave Constantino and Paul Varga, the original members, and that was a song of ours that when Dave heard it, when I started to work with him, he wanted to put it on the record, and that kind of that was that, and so it went all over the place, and we still do it in just about every tour I've been on for a long time. I'm thinking to put it to rest for a couple of tours. So.
I had a lot of people asking me to ask you about playing with David Lee Roth, because I have a ton of people out there that still love David Lee Roth's music. But how was playing for him, man? Was it just as crazy as he is on TV? I mean, how was it?
Oh, it was well balanced. We had our crazy, wild times, but we also had it very together, had a wonderful time together. Being with Dave was like a show business 101, a PhD in showbiz 101. He's a grandmaster. He's still my hero. He's still, I think, the greatest frontman rock has ever had. Mm-hmm. And I cherish those days very much. And I just had a dinner or Monday night with Steve Vai. We have a little get-together about it every year around this time, and a bunch of friends of ours. And we spent a long time reminiscing about the days back in View and Smile. And I saw Greg Bissonette also at their recent NAMM show here, and we talked about that all the time. And it was an incredible experience, and we're all better for it. Dave especially, too, of putting a band together with young guys who were just there to do the best they could for him, you know, and that's what we were there for, you know, mm-hmm. and looked up to him, and it was an incredible experience. I have nothing but positive to say about it.
For the Winery Dogs, for the people who have not got to see you guys yet live, what can fans expect at a show from you?
A lot of sweat.
Yes, sir.
And a lot of singing along. We did a show in Brazil, and the record had only been out for 3 or 4 days in Brazil, I believe. And you could not hear the band because the audience was singing the song so loud.
Wow.
They were singing the solos that Richie was playing on the record. Amazing. So it's a riot. And we have a great bunch of people that follow us all over wherever we play. Yeah. And come out, and so it's kind of it's kind of a nice little gang of people that hang out. We all mostly know each other. We're Winery Dogs. We come out and talk and hang after a show a lot, say hello to the fans. So we got a lot of great friends. So it's quite a communal and fun, enjoyable co-experience with everyone that's in the room. We do some playing, but we build that playing into and around actual songs, where there's real singing and real structure for songs that makes sense. So a lot of people said when they first heard about who was in the band, they thought it was just going to be a shred fest of notes everywhere. And we're all pleasantly surprised to hear songs that you could sing. We remember the chorus and all that. And that was though it wasn't necessarily our stated goal when we put the band together, it kind of naturally just evolved to that, because that's what all of us really love.
Yeah.
So if you come out to a show, it's going to be a hot, sweaty night of a lot of fun, and we'll probably get to say hello afterwards.
Does that surprise you, though, man? I mean, being overseas and you know, having another language and culture, sing along to the music, and plus even singing the solos. I mean, how is that?
Pretty awesome. Yeah, we did a show in France, in Paris, France, which is one of the hottest, most jammed nights of any place I've ever played. You could not have fit another person into the room unless you cut them into pieces, maybe, and stuck them in. It was the only way to get people in. And they went crazy. It was wonderful. we got to hang out a lot afterwards. We didn't have to take right away to the next city. So just hung out with an incredible bunch of people. They were so kind. Same in London, same in Milan. Plus, pretty much every place we've gone overseas, it's just been wonderful. And the USA too.
Since it's the digital age, do you think that it's helped bands out with social media and plus getting their music out there even more? Or would you like to see it go back to the older days of do-it-yourself, of putting your flyers up and word of mouth and just, working your ass off for it?
Well, actually, it has gone back to the old days. But now we also have social media and the digital recording revolution to help us. I was an early adopter of all things digital and all things internet. And so I love it. But because the music industry kind of fell apart, now the only real way to make it is to put a great band together, go out and play live and let people see you live. Because anyone knows you can fake it real easy with modern technology. You can get people that can't sing a note and have them just like a nightingale singing this beautiful piece of music. But live they won't do it. They'll be singing to a track, But for us, we actually do sing and actually do play. So I think people want that. So the best thing about the music biz now is that it's really based on live performance. You really going out there and really playing, and them coming out and seeing you and say, "Hey, guess what? It's the real thing. I'm going for it."
Yeah.
So I think that's an important thing. But I love the digital recording revolution. It has made things easy and cheap and level the playing field. You don't need $1 million to do a record anymore. You can do it for about $800 or less. And it's of comparable quality to records where unlimited cash was spent. So I love that. Young musicians, young bands get the chance to be on the same level recording-wise as the Grand Masters. So that's a good thing. And you're one click away from billions of people. So we have great, great opportunities now. It's a new world and a new frontier, so trying to figure out how those opportunities work or how to best utilize them is not easy, of course. But if it was easy, everybody would do it. You gotta figure it out and get out there, perform live, and for me, that's the most important thing.
That's very true. For the young ones that are out there wanting to start into music playing bass, what are some of the advice that you would give them?
Well, similar to what I just said, I related to it anyway. Get in a band and start performing.
Okay.
Start performing live. And don't worry about doing originals right away. Some of the greatest bands ever were copy bands or played copy tunes for years before they ever even thought about doing an original song. Because similar, and if you read the history of masters at any particular art form, even a painter, famous great painters would paint other great paintings, do their version of it to try to imitate it, just to get an idea of how it works. It was Hunter S. Thompson, the author, had a book. I forgot what book it was, but he sat down and hand copied one of his favorite books. I believe he hand copied or hand typed it with an old typewriter, just to get the feel of what it would be like to write a book like that.
Wow.
All the masters in any field have imitated those that come before them to get an idea of how it works and how it is. So a lot of bands, where they get together the first time ever and they're writing their first original song before they ever played Louie Louie or You Really Got Me by the Kinks.
Yeah.
If you can do that, man, awesome. But it's unlikely that you can, and your depth of understanding of songwriting and how it works and how to make a song really function and reach people is probably not as good as someone like the Beatles, who played in cover bands and bar bands for years before they broke. Van Halen, who played with all copy tunes. I got bootleg Van Halen of them playing pretty much the Talus set when he used to do on the East Coast, almost the same song. Led Zeppelin, ZZ Top, Aerosmith, all the stuff that they played for ages before they started writing anything. And almost everybody. Bon Scott, I got demos of him in the early days singing ballads and singing hits and singing pop tunes. Dio doing all kinds of pop songs and all kinds of hits as a copy band in clubs and all that. So, and people sometimes are surprised to hear that, but if you've been around enough, you know that it doesn't just drop out of the sky. It comes from hard work.
Exactly.
So if you've got the ability to get out there and start playing, you know, learn your favorite record, learn a song from 10 of your favorite bands, and be able to pull it off. Then when you go to write, it's going to be better. The writing is going to be better. It's going to make more sense.
I want to throw this out there too. You know, thank God for Kiss, because without Kiss, we wouldn't have had Dimebag for the time that we had him, for the great guitarist that he was. So, what's it mean to you, Billy, when you guys receive an email from a fan prior or to after a show that says, "Hey, look, you know, your music has pulled me through a dark time, which gave me inspiration." How's that feel to you?
Well, it brings everything home. It brings a final ending point for everything that you work for. Because as musicians and artists, we're trying to reach people. And we can reach them with our art. We hope that our art affects them, hopefully positively. As so much art has affected me positively, as I have gone down and may have had a troubled time and gravitated towards a particular song or music or musician that got me through it too. And when we see that happening from people listening to what we do, that's the real purpose of it all. And it may not always be some dark moment where we help pull someone through, and many of those have happened, thankfully. But it's also just anybody getting anything out of what we do, getting a great night. You know, life can be tough sometimes. You could go out on a Friday night, come see the Winery Dogs or Mr. Big or whatever, and have a fantastic time. You revitalize. You go back to life and start over again, and feel like you can pick up where you left off, only better. So I have personally received a lot of emails from people that were going through all kinds of difficulty. And then recently with Mr. Big, our drummer contracted Parkinson's disease and decided to, step up and fight back and go out there. And that has been a huge inspiration to lots of people that have been through all kinds of things, to see that, in spite of it all, he's still the Mr. Big drummer, whether he can drum or not. And he's with us on tour, and we still love him, and he's got to be there because he's the man, And, so that was inspiring to a lot of people, and that's the real payoff in the whole situation, that it has inspired people, because life is tough. All of us go through some hellacious, horrible catastrophe, loss.
Yeah.
All of us, everyone does. Everyone has people close to them who are going to die.
Yeah.
Everyone has medical challenges. Everyone is threatened with, accidents and difficulty. We all do. And we look to art, comedy, and entertainment as ways for us to revitalize and come around. And like I said earlier, music being the greatest art form, for me, music is the thing that moves me the most. More than a movie, more than a painting, more than a book, though those things do move me as well. But music is the way out of almost every difficulty, in my humble opinion. And yes, we do receive emails like that, and they just put us on top of the world. I mean, it feels like mission accomplished. We get somebody to write to us and say, we've got some help.
I want to say thank you for your music that you've created over the years. I'm a big fan of your bass playing, and like I said, to me, you're the closest thing to Cliff Burton as they are today. So thank you.
All right.
I'll tell you what, before I let you go, how can people stay in touch with you guys, check out your concerts, shows coming up? How can they do that? Buy your merchandise?
Well, I'm Billy at BillySheehan.com. Someone writes to me. I read it always. I don't always get a chance to answer, but I do my best. I answered tens of thousands, literally, of emails over the years, and I still continue to try. But there's a Mr. Big Facebook, there's a Winery Facebook, there's a Mr. Big Twitter, Winery Dogs Twitter. There are websites for that, easy to find. Good old Google or Bing or Yahoo or whatever you want. You just type in whatever it is, and it's all there. I'm Billy at BillySheehan.com, and it's easy to find me.
Would you care to do a promo for the show before I let you go?
Sure, what do you want me to say? Okay. Hey, everybody, this is your bass player, Mr. Billy Sheehan, right here, and you're listening to one of my favorite shows in the whole world, the BODS Mayhem Hour.
Everybody stick around, and you only hear these interviews right here on BODS Mayhem Hour. Thanks, Billy.
Okay, man.
You're listening to BODS Mayhem Hour.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.